As the old saying goes, there's more than one way to skin a cat. Let's talk about plant care your way. What's up, fellow plant enthusiasts? My name is Dylan, and this is Bane's Botanicals. Today, we're going to be talking about plant care your way. Now, the reason I'm making this video is because if you've ever watched multiple channels on YouTube about caring for plants or read multiple books or articles on the internet, you'll see that there's a lot of similarities with how to care for plants, but there's also a lot of differences. And you'll also notice that the care tips are never too specific. And the reason for that is there are so many factors that can affect how we care for plants. At best, we can have general guidelines about how to care for a plant. Let's take, for example, this cactus. This is a Mammillaria gracilis, really easy plant to take care of, also a very pretty plant, just because of the white thorns, the white spines and everything. But yeah, in general, bright and direct light, terracotta pots, a nice one to use, well-draining soil, easy on the fertilizer, no humidity, and water once it's been dry for a couple of days. I mean, that's the basic general care tips. But that doesn't mean that we can be super precise about it, and it doesn't mean that we can't alter some of those rules a little bit, depending on how you're caring for your plant. Basically, I made a list of the things that actually affect how we care for an individual plant. For example, with light, how far is it from the window? What type of glass do you have in your window? Where are you located on the earth? As in, how intense is the sun where you're at? What time of year is it? And as far as soil goes and pots go, what type of soil is it? What type of pot is it? How old is the pot? How old is the soil? Is it drained of its nutrients? What is the size of the pot compared to the plant itself? And then humidity. I mean, how much humidity is in your home? And what time of year is it? Because humidity fluctuates depending on what time of year it is, if you're someplace that has seasons. The plant itself, what type of plant is it? How big is the plant? What's the condition of the plant? Is it a rehab plant? Is it something that's been doing really well? What type of fertilizer are you using? How often are you fertilizing? Because some fertilizers you only have to do bi-weekly. Other fertilizers you do weekly because they're organic and they actually take more. And then watering. I mean, watering is affected by all of those things. How much you water. I mean, the thing is, watering is what we are most hands-on with when it comes to plants. That's the thing we do most often, and that's the thing we do that influences plants the most, is our watering system. So how much light a plant is getting is going to affect how much you water it, what type of pot it's in, what type of soil it has. If it's in a really humid place, it may not need as much water because the soil isn't drying out as fast. Now, when you take all of these things into account, that is why you can't have a precise number for certain things. I can't sit here and say, oh, this asplenium needs half a cup of water every 2 weeks. Like there is absolutely no way to determine that because of all of those things I just mentioned. Like it's impossible. And this asplenium is doing really well, and I've had it in this pot for a long time. But it would probably do okay in terracotta because of the type of asplenium it is. If you noticed how rigid this is and how it almost seems fake, it's because this particular fern is very, very hardy when we're talking about ferns. Now, I can't stick this out in the direct sun and expect it to survive. It probably won't. But there are rules that you can bend a little bit when it comes to something like this. And we could say the same thing about the cactus, especially if this were a bigger cactus. If I lived in Arizona and I keep a cactus in a 12-inch plastic pot out on my patio, it's probably okay that it's in plastic because the weather and the climate is going to dry that plant out so fast that it's not really going to make a difference what pot it's in, whether it's in plastic or terracotta, as long as it's not raining a lot, which it doesn't rain that much in Arizona. But, well, in the desert part of Arizona. But yeah, another kind of bizarre example would be this silver Maranta. I mean, it's actually doing really well. I'm trying to get it in focus a little bit, but it has a lot of new growth on it. We see a lot of new leaves coming out. The leaves that are currently on it are all nice and green. There's really no brown edges. Now, of course, when you look at some of the older leaves, they will start to get a little bit of that brown, especially on the tip. That's just that's just something that happens with most prayer plants for a variety of reasons. Sometimes it's lack of humidity, sometimes it's lack of water, other times it's water quality itself. When prayer plants start to turn brown, they usually start at the very tip just because of the way the leaf is structured. You guys can't see it, but I've got this big Tenanthe behind me. It's actually in a plastic pot, and it's stayed pretty well evenly watered, and it still has just a little bit of that brown on the tips. Not unlike palms. A lot of palms tend to have brown tips. It's just kind of part of owning a palm. Even in nature, they have those brown tips on them just because the very edge of the plant is so delicate and small that it's just not able to stay perfect all of the time. Chlorophytum is another one that gets brown tips a lot. Spider plants, you might notice that you have a little bit of browning there. But if you notice, this Maranta is actually in a terracotta pot. And it's been in a terracotta pot for probably about 4 or 5 months. I'm trying to think of when I switched it over. It was during the winter. I had it in a plastic pot, and it was staying so moist that the leaves were starting to yellow. And yellow leaves are typically indicative of overwatering. Not always. Sometimes yellow leaves can mean that it's underwatered, but most of the time yellow means it's overwatered. With most plants, if you're underwatering, the leaves turn brown, but sometimes they turn yellow. But yeah, this was definitely it was just staying too wet. So I thought, well, I'm just going to switch it to terracotta. And ever since I did, it's been just fine. And that's not to say that I think everybody should put Marantas in terracotta. Actually, on my Maranta video, I probably specifically said, these are going to do better in plastic pots because they just need to retain more moisture. I don't know if it's the type of soil that the plant came in. I don't know if it's the environment that I have it in, but it was not responding well to plastic, so I altered it. I fixed the problem. It's an unusual circumstance, to be sure, but it's the kind of thing that we as caretakers of plants have to be aware of. We have to be ready to make those minor adjustments that may seem counterintuitive to what we've been told or what we're used to, and that's perfectly okay. There are other guidelines that you may have heard over the years of caring for plants that don't necessarily apply always, or maybe they don't apply at all. One that I thought about recently is that I heard once that you're not supposed to water your plants at night because they might stay wet for too long, and you should water them in the morning so that they have time to dry out. I mean, okay, like it doesn't necessarily make a difference most of the time. There may be a couple of niche situations where watering it at night is going to give it just way too much water. I think it comes down to how often you're watering in that sense. So a cactus, I mean, if you don't wait long enough to water a cactus and you decide to water it again and you water it at night, then yeah, maybe it would get overwatered. But in general, I don't know. I think that's just not really applicable. I water my plants at night all the time, like just because that's when it's quiet and I'm able to actually get stuff done. And I've only ever lost one plant from overwatering, and it wasn't because I watered it at night either. One other thing that comes to mind is a lot of people really love putting their plants outside. Not every plant can go outside. It kind of depends on what kind of space you have, how much sunlight is, reaching your plants. You have to take a lot more into account when you're putting your plants outside because of the climate you're in. Is it windy a lot? Is it really dry? Does it rain a lot? Does the space get a lot of sun or a lot of shade? How cold does it get at night? I mean, these are things that you have to consider. And me personally, there's only a few plants I'll put outside during the summer. And they're plants that I know without a doubt, are plants that love sun. For example, Strelitzia. Strelitzia loves sun. It has huge leaves that are begging for sun, so I put it outside. Some palms I like to put outside, and snake plants, I'll put snake plants outside. But for the most part, I don't really like the hassle of having to babysit plants outside. They dry out a lot faster. Here it gets windy probably at least once every couple of weeks. There's just a ton of wind that just blows plants all over the place. So, I just don't want to have to deal with that. And also, I put my Clusia outside last year, and it actually had a problem with insects. Like, it ended up getting a lot of damage to it, not from spider mites, but just from like passing insects that thought, oh, this will be a good plant. So it's still got a little bit of scarring on it, and it's just, I should have just left it inside. I mean, it liked being outside, but it's a personal preference thing for me. And if the plants aren't suffering because of it, I think that's okay. Like, it's okay to have your own personal preferences if your plants are still thriving, if your plants are still doing well. So to kind of wrap this up, I just wanted to go over all of those things that affect plant care, and to kind of make sure that you guys aren't getting too caught up in following strict, rigid rules about things, because it's okay to make adjustments. I've made adjustments. I know some of you guys have made adjustments that you've told me about, and I think sharing those together is how we learn, and we shouldn't pass judgment, and we shouldn't say that something doesn't work. If it works for somebody, then it does work sometimes. But anyway, hopefully you guys learned a few things in this video. Thank you so much for liking and subscribing, and for following and everything. We're going to do another live stream soon. I actually have some new plans to show you guys, and yeah, thank you so much. Until the next video, I will see you guys very soon. Thank you.